we are joined by two key architects here of the union budget, the CBEC Chairperson as well as the CBDT Chairperson, and of course I'm joined by my colleague Nenda Rai with us here. Ma'am, let me start with you first. We have seen a fiscal slippage coming in this time around, and this on the back of two key reforms, demonetization and GST, and yet for next year we're pegging GST collections at close to 7.44 lakh crore rupees. Are we being a little cautious despite the finance minister saying that GST collections will rise in the years to come?
Well, let's just say that as you heard the finance minister, we are looking at this year having a 11-month collection and expenditure of 12 months. So you have a dip already, and the finance secretary mentioned also that the quantum of dip as well. But as you see things going along, and if you've seen the collections starting from July, you will see that there was a relatively good progress, and then there was a dip for 2 or 3 months. December has interestingly been much better, and we are now looking at about 88,000 crores, which is far better than what we did earlier. I'm looking at the next 2 months as being actually very robust and good for various reasons. One, I think GST has settled down by and large in many ways, and the compliance is far better. We've also, as you know, introduced the e-way bill from today, so we're hoping to get better compliance. The very fact that you have an e-way bill requirement is going to make people become more compliant. Till now, there was a lull in terms of the expectation that nobody's checking me, so probably I can go ahead and do what I want. But I think that is all coming to an end. We had also decided that enforcement is going to be something we have to start with, right. And I have in many times mentioned it as well, that this is a time for enforcement to begin. So proper checks and verifications to happen. Audit will also get on with it, and I think between all these that we are going to be doing, invoice matching, you know, the returns matching, so all that I think is definitely going to yield results, which you will actually see in the next financial year.
You know, before my colleague actually goes ahead with Sir and asks more and grills him more on the personal income tax front, you know, one important bit is on return simplification. That is something that the committee, the GST yes. Council is going to look at very soon. How soon can we expect that relief coming in? And more importantly, what kind of changes are we looking at as far as the return simplification is concerned? Because two key recommendations have been made by Mr. Nilekani and by the committee. So in which direction are we headed really?
As you know, there is a committee headed by Mr. Ajay Pandey, the CEO of
right.
GST, and it is under consideration. If you had seen what happened in the last council meeting on the 18th of December, then at that point of time, presentations were made by the committee on two options actually, and Mr. Nilekani brought a third one, which was like a merger of the two, right. and trying to simplify it as far as possible. So I think it would be a bit early to say what will happen, but suffices to say that when you've struggled with the returns till now, you're definitely going to be looking at a far simpler return. Now, how it will churn out and which option will be taken is yet to be seen, but definitely I think we can look forward. And then the question, how soon? Yes, of course, that is happening. It's with the committee, and it will certainly happen soonest.
After 1st of April, we're going to have to start introducing the chairperson as CBIC, not CBEC. There's, of course, a new name that has been announced in Mr. Jaitley's budget speech.
Yes.
We'd actually decided to divide direct taxes and indirect taxes between us for the interview. So, Mr. Chandra, I'm going to come to you first. Yes. You know, we at ET Now had reported exclusively that in budget 2018, we were going to see a standard deduction for employees, for the employed salary taxpayers, because there is a belief in the government that they are being shortchanged, and the numbers speak for themselves. Yes. Average of 76,000 is what is paid by an average salary taxpayer, and only 25,000 by a businessman. But can you break this down for the viewers who are tuning in right now? How does this standard deduction of 40,000 rupees mean? I'm sure everybody wants to know, everybody who's employed, that okay, I get this standard deduction, but do I still get to enjoy the benefits of, let's say, a medical or an LTA or an entertainment, etc., etc.? Can you explain this to us?
Yeah, earlier persons were getting some medical allowance up to 15,000 rupees and conveyance allowance up to, I think, 19,000 rupees or so. But every employee was not getting this much amount. That was graded, and some persons were getting it less also. And for medical expenditure, the bills were also required to be submitted. That was the maximum limit. So we thought that we should put across one simple standard deduction in place of two deductions like this, and that is why we reached to 40,000 rupees standard deduction to all salaried employees, okay, irrespective of the fact that whether you spent it on medical or you spent it on the conveyance, or in any other way whichever you like. So that is a very good relief without any bills and any other thing.
So
If 40,000 rupees standard.
So no other reimbursements will be allowed to an employee today?
As far as these two allowances are concerned, that we have eliminated. And if any other thing, any allowance which is required for the performance of a duty, for that is already exempt under section 1014.
So so in effect, what you have really done is just improve the system. You have improved the, ease the compliance part. But it's not as if an employee today is going to go back home with more in hand.
But they will definitely go with more.
How? So there's also 1% cess that you're charging.
But everybody is not getting the same allowances. Some persons are getting in place of 19,000, some persons are getting 10,000. Some persons are getting even less than 15,000. In some companies, there is no medical allowance. They are simply giving the medical insurances. So those persons will definitely get more surplus in their hands.
Okay.
And leave aside pensioners. They are not getting any allowances. So for them also, this 40,000 rupees will be given across.
Okay.
So they will be having around 12,000.
So those that enjoyed all of the benefits, they don't get more in hand per se, but they get, they don't have to submit
I
the
would say they will also get something more.
So you're taking the 1% cess, you're forgetting that, you're taking the 1% cess, 3% become 4%.
No, 1% cess is only on the tax. Cess is not on the income. So whatever is the tax, on that only 1% has been enhanced.
Okay.
So that is a very low impact of that.
Okay.
So whatever amount has been given as a deduction, and whatever comes to you, that will be absolutely free in your hand. And the way you want to use, that can be done. And surplus will also be there.
I'm sure the viewers, and if you have senior citizen viewers, they'll also want to know, it's a part of the speech that was made by the Finance Minister of dignifying them. And if they're tuning in and on our digital social media handles as well, how is life going to get better for them? How much more are they going to have in hand?
Yes, this is a whole bouquet which we have given to the senior citizens. First is the interest benefit. So far, only 10,000 rupees was exempt from the interest from savings bank account. We have increased this limit to 50,000 rupees, and whether the interest is from the fixed deposits or the post office deposits or anywhere else, so that particular amount up to 50,000 rupees is exempt. So they will get a direct benefit of that. Second benefit is regarding the insurance. That limit was only 30,000 rupees, medical insurance plus medical expenditure which they were incurring. That also we have increased to 50,000 rupees. And there was some limit of 60,000 rupees for senior citizens and 80,000 rupees for critical medical expenditure. That has been increased to 1 lakh rupees. And another scheme which was launched by the LIC, that Prime Minister Vay Vriddh Yojana, in that scheme only 7.5 lakh rupees was required to be invested earlier. That has also been increased to 50 lakh and extra return of 8%.
But sir, if you
so
let me interrupt,
bouquet.
I want to ask you one question. I'm sure Ruchi also wants to come in, and I hope she asks ma'am about our iPhones getting more expensive. But sir, if you would let me ask you this. On one hand, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley says that there is such a, there's no level playing field between the businessmen and the employees when it comes to giving taxes. You're trying to curb black money, flush it out of the system. There are honest taxpayers. How have they been, sir, if you can tell us, rewarded after demonetization? You did not tinker with the personal income tax slabs, even though direct taxes have gone up. Since demonetization, we've been hearing that once there is a pickup in tax collections, the taxpayers will benefit because they'll pay, hopefully the rates can come down. But you have not rewarded the taxpayers, sir.
You know what is the first slab? Is a 5%. And that we did it only last year. This is the lowest tax slab for any country. And 1 page return we introduced only last year. So that is the ease of doing business also, and 5% tax is nothing at the entry level. So virtually we have given it last year to all persons that up to 5 lakhs is only 5% tax.
So what about others? So that means you'll punish those that make more money?
No, not
at all.
That is why we have given standard deduction only to the salaried employees. Okay. Otherwise we would have increased the limit from 2.5 lakh to 2.9 lakh rupees also. That is another option. But we wanted to give it to the salaried employees, so we did only the standard deduction part.
So since you are talking about ease of doing business, and let me take that question to ma'am. A lot of tinkering has been done, especially on the customs law. Help us understand more on that. How will this help in trade facilitation? How will this help in ensuring ease of doing business, which has been something that Prime Minister Modi has been trying to push for a very long time, and we are trying to break into the the top 50 of the World Bank's ease of doing business ranking. So is it something that will fall in line with that?
You know, in fact, surprisingly, there don't seem to be much repercussions as far as the customs law changes are concerned, and I'm quite surprised because this time round, we had actually looked at the customs law, and it was something that the Prime Minister had said earlier also, that you need to look at redundancies in your law, remove them, and modernize your law. So that's exactly what we have done. We did want to go whole hog and do a very big shake-up, but we've done a pretty large number, and probably we'll have to do the rest later because it needs needs consultation with stakeholders, etc. But about 80% of the changes that have been made in the law really are for trade facilitation. And as you know, we are signatories to the WTO
Right.
TFA. And as part of that, there are certain obligations that we need to meet, which we have included in our National Trade Facilitation Action Plan. But even if it was not there, I think this is something that India needed to do to improve on the ease of business index, which is what is going to happen actually through these changes. There are lots of pros, at least about 12, 14 major areas which I think would be good for the trade. So there are places where, for example, in provisional, we used to have a system of provisional assessment, which sometimes, once you've provisionally assessed, doesn't really move on too much. It just gets stagnated there. Because party is happy, they've got their goods cleared.
Yeah.
So there was no time limit for that. We have put something in that. When we adjudicate cases after a case is made, there was no control on the number of, amount of time you would take to adjudicate. We've imposed on ourselves a time limit.
Absolutely.
In fact, actually saying that if you don't do it within that limit or the extended time limit, you are going to actually treat that show cause notice as void.
Right.
So we're risking the fact that it will become null and void if you don't do it on time.
There are more redundant laws going out in the system.
And hoping, and one more very important part which we've done, you have a number of government agencies who impose certain restrictions and prohibitions on import of goods. And as you know, we already have a single window running. On similar lines, we found that when clearances are coming about, a lot of the trade, including the staff, the officers, they are not aware of some of these. These notifications come in and they are not put anywhere for you to see. You don't even get them on the website. And even if you do, you can't be stopping your clearance and looking at each thing. What we did this time is we inbuilt in the law that any kind of notification that has been brought out on prohibitions and restrictions by other agencies will be notified through the Customs Act, so that there'll be a single point look for you to know what is there. Absolutely, absolutely.
We can't have both of you here and not ask this question, because we did see a big knee-jerk reaction. One thought the markets had factored it in. I'm of course coming to the long-term capital gains tax as highlighted by the finance minister. We did see an immediate reaction. Can you tell us a little bit about the rationality of bringing in the long-term capital gains tax? One would have thought the markets expected it. There was a bull run that was happening.
No, that was not the reason. That was bull run. Because all assets will have to be, taxed simultaneously and at the same level. The capital gain tax was absolutely, this all was exempt for last 15 years or so. And we found that last year, that the data has been given by the finance minister in the speech also, that 3,67,000 crore long-term capital gain remained absolutely untaxed, which was declared. And this was earned by the corporate and LLPs mainly. So we found that such a large amount of capital gain is absolutely untaxed, which is creating a bias against the manufacturing.
Right.
Because in the manufacturing the return is very less. So the persons were running towards the market and they were trying to get more returns from the market. And it was creating a bias. It was creating a difficulty in assessment of the different types of assets. Like if you have got a property and you are selling it, it is 20%. If jewelry, you are selling it after long term, 20%. But there is no tax on the long term. So it was creating a distortions. And therefore it was needed that we should tax it. And therefore still it is on a concessional rate of 10%.
Concessional rate, it could go up. You're hinting that next budget it could go up.
It is a less rate in comparison to any other asset. And we have kept the grandfathering of all the gains which has happened till 31st of January.
Which is a big relief.
Which is a big relief. So there is no retrospectivity about this. And whatever government has said that it will remain exempt, it is remaining exempt.
Perhaps that was the reason we saw a sharp dip, and then, after the clarification
they could understood that so far the gains are absolutely grandfathered and they will not be taxed. And they will be treated as par with the earlier law. Only when the shares will be purchased now, or if they are sold after this particular law, and then it is a 1 year gain, then something tax will be levied.
Right. I have, one very important question, and that on the corporate tax front. a lot of big companies were expecting that perhaps they will be brought under the net. This was a commitment the Finance Minister Jaitley made in his first budget of a corporate tax rate cut to 25%.
Yeah.
But only now, even now, like only 99% of the companies are under it. So what were the revenue considerations that went behind it? What was the kind of revenue loss that we were seeing, in case we had taken all the companies under the net?
Yeah. If you remember the last year, we put that up to the turnover of 50 crore, they should be brought to 25%.
Right.
So that was around 96% of the total companies which are filing returns with us. This year we also saw, and up to 99% of the company are into 25% net. If we would have brought all the companies in 25% net, then there would have been a loss of 60,000 crore, which is a huge loss.
Absolutely.
And this cannot be bridged by anybody else or any other thing. So even Finance Minister has said in earlier budget that gradually will bring it to 25%, and he is fulfilling his promises.